Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today I have with me Joel Schafer, and Joel is a personal empowerment mentor and shamanic dreaming arts teacher. Through online courses, one-on-one mentoring, and in-person workshops, Joel trains people in a highly effective way to reclaim vital energy and attention using the Toltec knowledge base. These are powerful, non-linear redistribution techniques that guide and support students in discovering clear purpose, increasing awareness, getting grounded, who doesn't want that, reclaiming focus, and accessing strong intent. Joel is also an excellent listener and mirror, offering practical but magical solutions to life's challenges. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you so much. So good to be here. Nice to meet you.
Yes, you too. I'm happy to have you here. So let's begin by just talking about what is Toltec shamanism and how did you find yourself on this path?
Yeah, the Carlos Castaneda books were introduced to me at a really young age, and I met somebody that had learned how to unlock the secrets of that material, and I trained with them. I kind of walked away from society at 16 and spent years in the woods, even hiking in the Rocky Mountains with 80 pounds of gear on our backs and like living out there and really putting our shamanic training to the test, so to speak. And I got kind of lucky and unlucky to meet a really powerful person that hadn't done their shadow work and was really young and reckless. And so it advanced me really quickly, but in a dangerous way. But luckily the books helped me, to come to terms with kind of what happened. And I kind of ended up meeting other shamanic people to help me understand what I had gone through. So I ended up meeting a variety of Native American elders and people that also taught me what not to do by modeling inappropriate ways of handling their power. But along the way, I came to realize that there's a moreness, there's other layers of the onion, there's the other side of the coin, so to speak, that one can learn into through lucid dreaming. And you can be awake while entering into those states, and you can start to track and understand just how real it is to dream travel or to use dreams as portals. But yeah, it was very intense training, and I continue to read that material, the Castaneda books. There's nothing like them.
The Four Agreements and
So sorry, Castaneda he wrote some really challenging material, but Don Miguel Ruiz wrote the Four Agreements, which is more like a watered down version of Castaneda material, not in a negative means. It's just not the depths. It's like the shallow part of the pool. But Castaneda explains things on a level that's next, it's just unprecedented what he unveiled, and nothing's ever been written like it. And there's many books, and he wrote them between the 60s and the 90s during, and he taught workshops, and he was a very powerful influence on the New Age movement beginning in the 60s.
Okay. And so this was your foray. Yeah. And thanks for the clarification for anybody who's listening that this is kind of new, completely new to. So this was your foray, and it sounds like many people, it started out of a wound, some, type of trauma, and off you went into the woods, and you've obviously, you now see that as a gift, but I'm sure at the time it might not have felt that way.
It was both, it was just like, it was a miracle to find amazing people that wanted to be saturated in the forest and to practice this stuff. I thought it was the greatest thing that could have ever happened. And then, but then it turned, and then I had to get out. And it's just the nature of things is that powerful people are often enter into illusions of grandeur as their power grows.
Yeah, such an important topic. And maybe we can, circle back to that a little bit, because I know that, a lot of times when people are embarking on this work, people can feel like, oh, it's a cult, and it's you can really get attached to the person that's teaching you it and think that that's the point. And that is not the point.
Yeah, finding a way to avoid pedestals, not putting people on them, and not letting yourself be put on one, because everyone gets hurt from that. It's very ungrounding.
Yeah. So when we think about the dreaming arts, tell us what that means exactly. Like, break it down for someone that has no idea what we're talking about.
Totally. Yeah. So shamans of ancient Mexico in the peak of their power and in the peak of their joy, they practice very strange shamanic movements that help them to feel even better. You know, it was very strange ways of moving that put them in deeper and deeper states of heightened awareness. And those are the movements that I teach. They allow you to connect to that lineage. And that those movements, for whatever reason, are really helpful at being able to then recapitulate. Recapitulation is a form of life review where you go back and you get your essence in any areas where you may have left it. So it's like soul retrieval work. And often there's quite a bit of youthful energy that we didn't realize that we just kind of left sitting there, and we can actually go back and retrieve it. So it's a very beautiful type of breath work. So these movements, which they call magical passes, lead to being able to recapitulate. The recapitulation eventually erases your personal history because you are now in the present. You're not blueprinted by your past. Everything feels new. You've cleaned up your story and you're no longer caught up in any of the drama of what was. And you're in a fierce state of presence. And that allows you to become pretty psychic and telepathic. And you start to get a lot of deja vu because you're more in tune with what's coming rather than dwelling or resenting anything that was. So it's kind of a strange way of freeing up your energy system. And it works really well once you learn how to do it. It's kind of evasive or challenging to figure out that type of breath and how to drop that deep to where you're actually getting it done. That's why the movements are in place to basically break up energy that's been stagnant in your field and redistributing it to your organs. When you do that, then you become more in touch with your body, and then your body is what you follow, your intuition rather than the mind. So these movements put you in silence, and then you're able to receive a deeper level of knowing, what we call silent knowledge. And so that leads to then being able to use dreams in a magical way. You start discovering that you can become conscious in your sleep, and you can start to, what we call dreaming gates, become accessible, where you learn to go to sleep consciously in a dream, wake up in a deeper level, go to sleep again, wake up in a deeper dream, and you can travel consciously deeper and deeper and deeper, like in the movie Inception, but without any drugs or manipulation technologies. We have that technology within us, is to use dreams in magical ways. So it's essentially the whole point of the work is to be able to use dreams as portals. And we are meant to travel into other layers of the onion, but some forces, according to Toltec, has convinced us to stay put, and we're caught in an eddy. We're meant to be traveling and exploring and living very vital, powerful existences, but we've been hypnotized by a force that's higher on the food chain. And so shamans learn to stop feeding that force and break away from the conditioned domestic sort of hypnosis. And that's really challenging because you could lose your marbles as you unbind from the typical mind state. You don't want to lose your mind entirely. You need to very delicately do this. And so that's the work. It's a very sobering, mature process to get honest about where you're really at in this, because it is dangerous to unlock perception, but it's probably more dangerous to remain hypnotized in as far as your soul being healed or not.
Yeah, say more about that. It's more dangerous to remain hypnotized as far as your soul healing.
Yeah, like shamans look at our death as a really magical rite of passage. And if we could remain conscious and aware up until our death instead of becoming lost in dementia or dying of, like our whole journey is designed to be about consciousness. Toltecs say this isn't even a physical place. We are experiencing as if it is for the convenience of interacting with it. But shamans, in order to free their perception, have to unbind from the physical and experience the ecstatic interaction with lucid, energetic traveling. And there's the most incredible things you can do with your perception in this realm once you discover that. And so life becomes a miracle. The earth becomes your closest friend. She reveals and will take your pain, once you understand that she's an alchemist and that she can be communicated with in this non-linear way. It's very psychedelic, the awareness that the creator force has for us to interact with. And we are an extension of that. So it's like returning home, and your days
Yeah.
become Cool.
Yeah, so it's like antithetical to the way that the world kind of runs right now, right? Where everything is in materialism and like this is happening and so I feel this way and I've got to try and prevent that from happening so I don't feel that way. And I've got to try and achieve this and try and achieve that in these material ways. This is traditionally what success is, and
Exactly.
this is really walking away from all of that and seeking
Yeah.
something much greater.
Yeah, there's a purpose that's discovered, and you do realize that you have to let go of attachments that are of the material, what we call the merchant mind, the like, what am I getting out of this deal? The me.
Yeah.
In order to see the beauty, you have to shatter the mirror of self-reflection.
Just speak to that. Shadow, the mirror of self-reflection. Unpack that for people.
Shatter, like break
Shatter.
the mirror, so that you're not comparing yourself. You're not looking in the mirror trying to get validation of something from your how society perceives you. You're become a psychedelic perceiver. So you're looking at the beauty of this realm and not thinking about you. You're just falling in love with what you're witnessing. And that requires, a lot of letting go of needing to be seen by anyone in any way, like your validation, your need to be validated by men, women, teachers, the wounded ego trying to get seen. When you heal that stuff and you realize that the Earth Mother herself can validate you, you can be witnessed by source, then you're no longer seeking validation outside and you start to go inward and you start to find creative ways to move your body and get to the pain, get to the anger, get to the resentment, and start to process it through your system as creatively as possible, and you start to heal yourself emotionally. But when you're caught up in the hive mind, basically it's like listening to a radio channel and you can't turn it off and you think it's your own thoughts, but it's not. It's a program.
Yeah. And even having the awareness that we are thinking about ourselves all the time, right? Because a lot of people will say, I don't think about myself all the time. I think about other people. That's the problem. I think about other people too much. Having the awareness that no, really, like this is how the mind works. We are all conditioned to constantly be obsessed with how we look, how we feel, what, me.
Yeah, and that's where the recapitulation reveals that your patterns and habits and interactions with the mind, if you can get back to that 0 to 3 age, you were tripping out when you were an infant. And then this force moves in and we take on the description of the world and we learn to be normal. And in that normalcy, which is good that we learn, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to function. But we eventually need to come out of that hypnosis somehow as a means to heal any blocks that are in our chakra system, which are keeping us from remembering what we are. Right. So there is a way to come out of hypnosis. And I've come out of many layers of hypnosis and I have many more to go. But some people have not even moved out of one layer. They're still in like a junior high mindset,
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I was just having that conversation with someone that, that we do get stuck at developmental ages and people will act like junior high schoolers.
yeah, forever, and it's crazy to watch, but they're messengers. We don't need them to be anything other than they are. They're showing us how not to do it. And we get an upfront, close version of how painful it is to be that conditioned and never to have any authentic experiences outside of that conditioning. So all of this is about authenticity.
Yeah. And it sounds like as well what you just said, because what happens, of course, is that in general, people get very upset with the person who's behaving that way or doing those things or whatever. And what you're saying is you're operating from such a place of love and, ground zero, oneness, that you can observe that behavior in someone else, or that behavior in someone else can actually directly impact you. And
Yeah.
you can see it and feel like, what a beautiful mirror, as opposed to being triggered by it, and maybe even feel compassion for that person who's not able to move out or doesn't have the awareness at this moment or maybe ever in this lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. It's you stop being offended and you realize everything is a sign and an omen and is in place to teach you. Everything's happening for you, not to you, including every person that you come into contact with. And so shamans say that tyrants are a necessary part of all of this. So they, even when they get really strong, they go try to get a job with someone that has the biggest ego they can find so that they can figure out how well they can keep their center in the presence of somebody that's like berating them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I've had an occasion to do some work around, really have that focus like this is an opportunity for me to not get caught up in the need to be seen or the need to be da 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 and, to keep this person off a pedestal. It's very powerful.
Yeah,
Break that.
everything is like that. You can change your perspective on every situation and find the gold, and so it's all designed like an obstacle course in a sense. And once you cross certain tests or thresholds, then you don't have to deal with that stuff. The world was sending you certain people in your life so that you learn how to not run away and how to create boundaries and how to take care of yourself inside of those challenging situations. But it is disturbing to witness the hypnosis and the loneliness that people can go through when they start realizing that they don't want to be around there's not very many people they want to be with. You have to listen to that voice. I spent a lot of time alone because I was getting my yeses and nos really clear, and it was all nos. But that
It was
led
all
to
knows about.
all the invitations with people. I was just getting no's. It doesn't feel, and then, but that led because I listened, it led to some really beautiful yeses later on where somebody did show up in my life that I wanted to hang out with. And then the laughter and the connection that healed me after being alone for so long. So sometimes it's almost like we're being tested.
So do you never feel that anymore? Do you never get put off center by something that happens or triggered in your life?
Yeah, no, I do. I just so much less than before. It's just next level compared to what it used to be. But like, it doesn't like where people get offended if someone cuts them off in the vehicle or on a road. None of that triggers me because it's almost like I already know it's happening before it happens because I'm feeling everything like an animal. I'm more in my animal body. I'm not in my and I'm never late for work because I don't create those kind of realities for myself. Changed my way in which I interact with time, and I'm just not concerned if I need to cancel whatever shift. I just don't let other people's fears or pressures interfere with things. But I'm also always functional because I have tons of energy and I'm not behind on things. But yeah, it's tricky stuff. I'm still going to face challenges, especially even more than ever because I'm further along in this process.
And the more
So
challenges come to you, the further along you get,
and
right?
yeah, and a lot of my clients are like, but I just want the challenges to stop. And I'm like, but once you realize they're only going to increase and you walk toward them, then you realize they're not monsters. They're not scary.
Yeah.
When you were running from them and trying to get them to stop happening, you turn them into a much bigger obstacle than it really is.
It's kind of like transmuting the energy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're functioning from a much more energetic realm than, that's really how you're moving through the world at this point and helping people learn how to trust that more than maybe what the mind is trying to say.
Toltec say we have two minds, a natural mind, and then the other mind is a foreign installation. And it's got a hard voice. And the soft voice is the natural mind. It's very loving. It's guiding you toward your soul. The hard voice, we think it's our thoughts, but it's just running energy through our filter of our thoughts and our subconscious fears. And it's going after our wounds. It's trying to get us to operate from our hungry ghost. Yeah,
And
so
why does that happen? Why is that happening?
we've just been outmaneuvered by a predator that's much more advanced than us, but it's in place to prepare us for how powerful we are. So this cannot continue. At some point, enough people have to evolve and become aware of what's actually happening. And that's the time we're in now, is that more and more people are going to be able to become really resourceful, remember their magic and medicine, and stop feeding this thing. That's the only option you have. You can't convince this thing to stop feeding off of others, but you can stop feeding it yourself. And that's the 100th monkey thing, is if you do this, then you'll give permission to other people to do it. And it's the greatest gift you can give humanity, is to heal yourself.
Yeah. I say that a lot because I think one of the things that happens is in, more spiritual communities is there tends to be this sort of spiritual numbing thing that goes on, and people think it's all la la la, and they're thinking more than they're feeling, and then they're wanting to go out and heal the world. And to me, healing the world is healing yourself, like one person at a time. Like it has to be looking in the mirror. Like that's the only way that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's usually wounded healers that aren't really facing their true depths of their shadow that feel called to do that, to go out. And a real healer teaches people how to heal themselves rather
Yeah.
than takes on the role of being the healer, right? So these are all archetype traps that everyone tends to fall into. I help people not to go into the
Yeah.
trenches of being a lawyer, the trenches of being a podcaster, the trenches of, there's all these trenches that people just, they end up being patterned based on the collective patterning of identifying with that position. But there's a way to dance around those trenches and to not let yourself identify in that way, and you start to become more mysterious. In the books they would say you want to keep a fog around you so that nobody knows whether you're coming or going, including yourself. And there's a way to, because then life is constantly spontaneous. You're not inside of any mental, like if you're really listening, then it's amazing to create a life in which you don't have heavy routines, and every day is like maybe your last, very likely your last, and so you only do the things you truly want.
Yeah. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't going to be a lawyer or you aren't going to be a podcaster. It means you're not going to get stuck in, ratings and comparison and win or lose a case, right? It's not like,
No,
because I think sometimes, go ahead.
you do want to go and find really powerful things to do and have purpose and learn to become very competent in the realm of man. The part of the training is you even want to go to universities potentially and learn things that you don't enjoy, and do them without losing energy. Learn information and stay on point and get ace the test without getting stressed out or drained, as a means to test your capacity. So this training leads to challenging yourself in a multitude of ways as a means to prepare yourself for all the potential of being able to use dreaming. You need to be grounded and functional and not head in the clouds, kind of shamanic out there. It's got to be like integrated, otherwise it's out of balance. And so this place is perfect for that. But yeah, if you are caught up in, if you start hanging out with the boys at the construction site, and you end up, there's just a way to get trapped into the mentality or the shadow of the industry, and you don't have to. You can keep your magical energy, not get spun out by that persona, or through association get lost and lose your own purpose.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Gurdjieff work because I've had people on that studied him, and I've been studying him for a while, and he talks about the two separate rivers, right? There's the life river and the work river, and the life river is everything that's happening in the 3D, and the work river is the consciousness of the ability to observe what's happening in that life river. One of the reasons I love that work, and one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this podcast, was because of that spiritual numbing, where we have to have boots on the ground. We have to live in this human body. That's what we're doing. And so, but to your point, you're saying it's such a beautiful opportunity if we take it as such to evolve ourselves.
Yeah. If we can get our creativity and our imagination reclaimed from our youth, then we can apply it to everything that we do. And so, going to the job site or whatever you like, there's a way to interact with your career. As a construction manager, I got to use my psychic intuition and not take on the stress in the way most people did, because I was in a place of silent knowledge rather than keeping track of everything. And so when something needed to happen, it was like this boom. I knew I had to get up. I could tell when someone was about to pull into the job site. I was in tune with I was using my shamanic capacity to, in a practical way, just like an athlete would. Athletes out on the football field, they're feeling everything. They're so in their bodies. It's kind of life or death if they're not in their power.
Yeah.
And they can get really hurt if there's not running that energy. And So finding your capacity within this place. So we teach in the Toltec means we try to help people reach unbending intent, where your focus is so unbending that nothing can keep you from what you're here to do. And so you don't sacrifice your stress and time and energy for some company that gives you a paycheck. You find a way to get that paycheck without sacrificing what most people sacrifice.
So the email that comes in, or the disgruntled coworker, or all those kinds of things, what typically happens is that all of the energy that goes, there's a lot of energy that goes out dealing with that kind of thing. And when your higher aim, your focus has nothing to do with that. It has to do with being able to collect your energy to use it for a greater good. Then you're saving a lot of energy, and you're able to tap into the things that you're talking about.
Yeah, you're not offended. If you stop being offended, Toltec say we spend most of our life being offended by one thing or another. What if all of that went away and you didn't have to put your energy into any of that? You could do so much more with it. And then
I was just going to say, to outline that, like, offended, people will often think they're offended has sort of a narrow definition. But I think what we're talking about is we can be offended by, like, if I bump my elbow and it hurts, I'm offended.
Yep.
If, someone takes too long to do something that I want them to do, I'm offended. If you get a look sideways from someone, offended. Yeah, that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, you don't have to take anything personally. And that's really advanced. But once that happens, then you're just observing. You're the observer. Then it doesn't mean you're a pacifist. Your boundaries get really strong. You learn to bark and say what needs to be said. So it's not like this spiritual bypassing. It's the deal. It's all of it. You're never going to be enlightened. There's no such thing. Everyone has holes in their consciousness. You're always going to have potential triggers. And in fact, it gets really kind of scary as you evolve, because your triggers become more dangerous because you have more energy, you have more potential to come unhinged. And so you really got to get to know your shadow along the way. I've seen some really powerful people that didn't deal with that. They became celibate without getting to know their relationship to desire, and they stuffed all that energy, and it turned into actual psychosis and schizophrenia on a really profound level, because we are capable creatures, but if we're not careful and get to know our humanness, or try to shut off our feelings to move past stuff, then it doesn't work.
So I've heard you say that you, like, a lot of people like to work, a lot of healers like to work with the higher centers, and you kind of like to work with the lower, potentially for exactly this reason. So can you speak more to that, like the shadow side, the dark side, and how you think about it, manage it, all that stuff?
There's just a lot of programming in religions and spirituality that it's about ascension and staying above, and staying in the upper chakras. And I see a lot of people doing that, but I think it's an avoidance that doesn't ultimately work. And so if you can practice descending into what you feel in your lower chakras and even below, like if I'm having a lot of sexual frustration, I'll place it down in the earth below me. And it feels so good to just have somewhere to place it. But I can also run it up into the upper chakras and use it for dreaming energy. But if I get attached to thinking it only is for dreaming energy, then I can create almost a religion in my own reality around that. And I can try to and avoid the lower chakras. And so a lot of people speak negatively of the lower chakras. But if we can get to know what our desire is, then we'll be more in tune with passion, and we won't be skipping or disciplining ourselves past what we truly want. And the only way to know what we want is to explore. And so I think there's this spiritual bypassing that's keeping people from getting to know what impeccability is. And the difference between impeccability and discipline is like avoiding certain things that are on a list out of fear. But if impeccability is like doing what you want because you truly want to do it and it makes you feel amazing. So it's more like a listening rather than a fear-based avoiding. So Don Juan said in the books, the Castaneda books, that to deny what you want is the greatest indulgence of all. And it makes you feel like you're better than other people who don't. And so you don't put yourself above or below anyone in this work. And when you really come to terms with that, everybody's just operating with a different set of areas in which they're unconscious, then you stop judging people, and therefore you eventually stop judging yourself. and you get to know your hungry ghost, which typically is the wounded part of you that's trying to get its needs met through sex, drugs, alcohol, something in the realm of not you, something outside of you. And that's where, I watch people discipline themselves to the point that they don't get to know their hungry ghost. Therefore, they're not being honest with self. Therefore, they're not, able to get from where they are to where they want to get. They try to force it. They skip the steps. They're going to have to go back and deal with that at some point. I try to help people to be honest in that way. And it really does seem to be a slower, but more realistic, more likely to get to the place you want to get to if you do that work prior than jumping into the advanced stages.
Because it really is sort of an epidemic, right? I mean, because when you talk to people who even are, on a path and wanting to, self-actualize or whatever it is that they're working on, and then they fall off the wagon, or in their mind, they fell off the wagon. It's the beatdown is so swift, and it's really hard to reroute that habit of this is, that's not, in fact, that beatdown is going to inhibit what you're really trying to do.
Yeah, and then the shame and guilt that's unnecessary inside of that you add, and it just makes it into a monster that it didn't need to be, had it been given a chance to communicate its needs, because it's a wounded part of you, typically, that is afraid of evolving. And because you're not asking that part of you if it's ready to move on, it plays out in what appears to be sabotage. But in a way, it's actually doing its job. This is the parts work where you get to know your little different ages of you that got left behind, that are retreating in different areas of your psyche. And we really have multiple personalities when you really get to know yourself. It's like, I'm in my rebel teen right now. My wife is now being my mom, and I'm rebelling against what she's asking me to do, and I'm going to go run away. And, like, these things are just part of how we got here. And nobody's really an adult. Everyone's really like a child within an adult body. But it's because people can't admit that to themselves and own up to their parts and pieces. They try to tell a story that makes it sound really good, but it's ultimately trying to uphold something that eventually is going to fall on some level. And thankfully,
yeah, and what you're talking about is really the self-deception and delusion that we kind of live in. And I wonder if you can speak to, like, because Mark Gober is a mutual connection of ours, and that's how we connected. And I asked him, like, what's one of the things that you really attracted to about Joel? And one of the things he mentioned was, he seems to be able to see through the deceptions in the world in a way that, most people can't. And I wondered if you would speak to that, the deceptions of the world, a little bit more.
Totally. Yeah. It's, the Toltecs say that we live in a phantom world, and only when we free ourselves from this theater and move into other layers of the onion will we no longer be phantoms ourselves. So this is like a dream, and we're like asleep. But if we could wake up, then we would understand how incredible it all is. So waking up to the deceptions of the inverted realm that we are in, it's like upside down world where women are acting like men and men are acting like women because we've been tricked, hijacked, manipulated purposefully by people that are possessed by forces that aren't human. So it's not the people's fault. We're dealing with something that's outmaneuvered us, and it's created this situation we're in. And it's a very gifted predator in that it's done. If you can take a person and put them as far away from the truth as possible, right? And then one truth leads to all truths. So if you have to lie about everything if you're going to keep people deceived, because we are very smart. We're very capable of figuring this out, but it's really disturbing to face. And so most people subconsciously don't want to open that door and start looking at everything we've been told.
What are some examples that you can share?
I mean, a lot of like what Mark talks about is, just realizing what happened with academia and medical industries and all of the what supposed tests were done that didn't have proper controls. We've been lied to scientifically. We've been lied to about what they've discovered in looking outside of this realm. We're being deceived about our cosmology, our history. It just takes looking into it to realize that it's all propped up on everyone pointing at different people saying, oh, well, they said this and this test was done and this, and they're all old tests and they're all bullshit. You just have to spend enough time looking at it to realize that this whole thing's a psyop. Reality is a psyop. And it's through these secret societies that benefit from manipulating humanity, and they're the ones that have made agreements with these forces that I'm referring to. So you can do ceremonies and stuff in order to get help from forces that are here, and you can align with them. And so the Toltecs say there are people that seek power in this life, and then there's people that seek power in the afterlife. Toltecs seek power in the afterlife, so they're not here to get caught up in any of that. But there's other kinds of sorcerers that are here to take slaves. The more people they have control over, the more powerful they feel. It's not about money. People think it's about money. The monopoly game's over. The families that have all the money already have all the money and all the resources and all the power and all the influence. Now it's about sorcery. It's about getting people to wear masks and stay 6 feet apart. It's about getting them to do rituals that show that they're sheep so that they lose any sense of worth and power. And so as soon as all that happened, I told people just, to not cover your face for any reason whatsoever. And it takes a certain type of person to be able to do that. And that's the kind of people we need, is warriors.
Yeah, and it's a dangerous game, right? Because you lose friendships, you lose things, you're really ostracized in a major way when you start doing that kind of stuff.
But that's necessary. Anyone that would do that isn't someone that you're going to want in your circle long term, because you're here to evolve. And so it's the greatest thing that could happen. And some of the best connections have come out of this. And it's just, so it's about that deep listening, your yeses and your nos.
So when you talk about, because I know some people will be listening and just think like this whole demonic thing that is controlling all of us, this guy's a whack, like speak more to that a little bit. Like what is this force that's doing it? Where does it come from? And how do you, I think I have an idea, but how do you manage, the feedback that you get about that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not in many circles where I get a lot of negative feedback. People that listen to me are curious and are open. I do go on X Spaces and get in conversations with large groups, which is like a chat platform. And I've had some religious people come after me with everything, but I'm probably closer to the religious people than the atheists in that respect too. So it's just different versions of threat. But yeah, we are not alone here. That's totally understood from even the scientific people know that something's observing us. And so when you become aware in your dreams, you realize that that's not your aunt and uncle that you're having dinner with. They're just like interdimensional beings that are pretending to be your aunt and uncle. So the dreams lead to understanding we're not alone. If you go out in the wilderness on mushrooms alone at night and you open up yourself to see, you'll start to encounter that there's beings out there that don't have physical shape, that they can come up and scare the shit out of you. And that takes a certain type of person to be able to handle being in the presence of forces that you can't see. But there are haunted homes. There are all kinds of strange phenomenons that people have discovered, but they're coming at it from a scientific perspective. Toltecs have just had the ability to see energy directly as it flows, and they've accessed deeper aspects of their perceptual capacity. And we are so not alone. Like there's all kinds of activity, and it's really exciting. It's actually really encouraging. These beings can teach us so much. They live much longer lifespans than we do, but they're attracted to our light because our light gets doled out over a very short period of time, and theirs has to extend for a long period of time. So they seek association with us, and shamans learn to have associations, and mythical creatures like the Yeti, Sasquatch, these are beings that can walk in and out of different layers of the onion that are more advanced than us. Trees are conscious.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking as you're saying that, well, but you're not a great commercial for it because, to go to sleep and wake up realizing that, your aunt and uncle are demons from another, like that sounds terrifying. Who wants to do that? But you're referring to there's a breath.
Yeah, they don't have to be demonic. It's not, they're not really, these are just beings that there's all kinds of helpful inorganic beings, and there's inorganic beings that are here to challenge us. But ultimately, the challengers are probably more helpful than the helpers.
So it's learning to not have so much fear.
Yeah, so fear is the first enemy of man. There is no enemy outside of you. The enemy is within. If you can figure that out, then the pathway opens. And the only way to become fearless is to realize what's really going on here.
And I've heard you talk as well about, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'd love for you to go into how you work with death, because, that's obviously a huge fear. And I've heard you say that death is really a key area of where really meaningful work can be done.
Yeah, shamans say that death is our advisor. And it's the only one that'll be honest with you. And if you think things are really bad, just turn to your death, and your death will say, "This is nothing. I have yet to touch you." So we want to form a relationship with this force, become aware that we're going to die. Toltec say the difference between them and everyone else is that they are aware that they are beings who are going to die, and they are fully conscious of that. And they say that the rest of humanity is behaving as if they're immortal. There doesn't seem to be any consciousness of their impending death. It's
Yeah,
not.
say more about that. How do you just highlight that? How do you know, like, what is it about the way that we behave that you can tell that nobody is acting as though they're ever going to die?
Yeah, it's like you can read their energy signature and you can see their thoughts when you no longer have thoughts like other people. And you can just feel their unconsciousness, that they're not in tune with their death because they don't have that sadness or appreciation that comes with it.
Because if we really lived in full consciousness that we could die at any moment, would we be doing any of the things that we're doing in this moment?
Right. Yeah. And that's the question, is like, how do you do both? Like, how do you live your life as if you're going to live a really long life, and at the same time live as if this could be the last moment and that you might disappear any second? So
Yeah.
yeah, like being able to cry at the restaurant and not care that it's just pouring out of your eyes at the most inopportune moment. That could be the most healing thing that can happen. It's just being
Right.
open to all of it, and becoming ultra sensitive, but super healthy and strong and boundaried, so that you can take care of yourself while being that connected to everything. It's, like when a bird flies by, I feel like I'm flying. And so it's such a psychedelic experience for me. I don't take it for granted. And there's a
But
way to do
still
that.
being able to sit with the sadness, and of impermanence, is being fully conscious of that can feel
Yeah.
unbearable.
And then the emotions will really move through you and you'll heal. So this is a place of terror and beauty, but the beauty balances the terror. And so we do want to open ourselves up to feel it all. It's so worth it, because the fear goes away. You remain scared, even terrified, but the fear is gone. And so it doesn't limit you from being able to take care of what needs to be taken care of. And so you become a warrior. You become capable of facing and walking toward monsters fearlessly, because you know that you're here to keep your spirit intact, not your body. So you fall in love with your existence because there's purpose and meaning, and you become capable of understanding how valuable this lifetime is and how much can be done with it. And at any point, that discovery can be made in your life. There's people that have made the most incredible transformations super late in life. There is youthful energy you can go back and get through the recapitulation, and you can have the most magical, lucid experiences, especially as you get older, because you start to become more energetic and less physical as you transition out of here.
So the amount of presence that I imagine that brings in is just absolutely, you know,
It's so healing. It's so beautiful. It's like it's all a dream, and you finally get to just stop and observe it. We call it stopping the world. If you
yeah,
stop thinking thoughts, all of this goes away, and there's a twin world on the other side. And so you want to
yeah.
get your breath work dialed in. You don't need mushrooms to go over there. You just have to have so much joy and laughter that you have the courage to use this life to see what's possible, and to be guided so that you're not recklessly getting yourself in a situation that you can't recover from. It's tricky.
Yeah, it sounds quite tricky, and it really sounds like your population is going to, at least in the short term, hopefully not in the long term, is pretty narrow, right? Like you have to really want this, because this is not easy work. Soul retrieval work and recapitulation It's tough. It's painful. It's hard. It's scary, right?
Well, there's great pressure to not do it. And so that fear is not your own.
It's the collective.
It's the predator.
Yeah.
It's like a kid with his hands in the cookie jar that's afraid of getting caught. If you realize that mind is not yours, you can turn it off. And that this thing is scared of you getting to that point because then it will lose its sustenance. So I help people to get to the point where they no longer are feeding this force. But I have people of all walks of life that train with me. Some people that are just seeking a path of heart or trying to find resolution with their partnership. You know, it doesn't have to be all in like I am. It's just that I found a system where the wheel is already invented. And if you just do the movements, you can redistribute all this stagnant energy and place it in the areas in which you'll be inspired and creative and imaginative. And you will no longer get drained from life. You'll start getting energized. And then you can do whatever you want with that energy. You don't have to go into shamanic stuff at all. So, but again, great pressure not to train with me because I take away the complexity and the excuses. I tell you, all you have to do is this. Life doesn't have to be hard.
Right.
Here you go. Just show up once a week to this class and it will completely change everything forever. But it takes a certain person to push past that resistance that shows up and continue to train.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how long does a training like that? I mean, I imagine that the layers, it's an onion, so you could do it forever, obviously, as you know, you
What's
are.
It's some people do the 9-week course and they don't come back, and some people are there the next month because each course is different. There's new movements taught in each course. So people that have been doing this with me all along, there's no repeats. It's just always fresh and magical and intuitive as well. So there's just so much, and it's become a community of really powerful people. So a lot of older women are training with me that could easily be teaching this stuff, but they honor me by supporting what I'm doing, and they're more in the private stage of their life. So it's not just me that you're going to be affected by in training. And then the one-on-one sessions, there's a lot of the the type of psychic feelings I tap into and the questions that I ask make it very effective to meet with me because I'm able to help people to see that which they have limited their story. And that's the ego is always creating limitation. When you take that limitation away, then life gets really simple and expansive. And
And yeah, and what I love about it is that, none of it is requiring thought. There's no not you're not using your mind to do this, right? This left brain dominance and cognitive offloading that we talk about a lot on this podcast. This is all happening from energy and movement and
yeah, you can move beyond the mind. Don Juan in the Castaneda books, he vanquished his mind. He still was still dealing with this annoying predator energy his whole life, though. It just because he learned to turn it off doesn't mean it's not there waiting and trying
yeah,
to get back in. And the more you advance on the path, the more advanced the interference gets. So it tries to outmaneuver you. If you come out of victimhood and start to become liberated, it's going to try to convince you you're special, try to
right.
hijack you that way.
Yeah. Yes. So tell us what do you think intuition is? What is your definition of intuition with all of your knowledge base?
So, everything is a feeling, but because we're so mental, it's hard for us to feel. But when you really are able to move what's blocking your emotions, and then those emotions move, you'll gain access to feeling really strong feelings. And the more you learn to feel and the more you trust your feelings, then you start to build a relationship as if you're being informed, as if you're being guided, and you
Yeah,
learn to listen. So I try to help people come out of manifestation and move into listening. There
I
is a
love.
divine plan that the creator force has in place for each one of us. And when it comes to that interference, it's just a force that's matching the incredible love that is available that will guide us.
And so, do you think of that guidance as like sort of streaming, like a source love, or do you feel like it's inside or both, as above, so below?
Yeah, well, I mean, Toltec say that we are luminous cocoons. We are balls of light. Our physical body exists inside of these toroidal fields, and you can learn to see them. And they're these beautiful, like, rings of fire that roll along the earth that come into our being that are, it's this most like loving, supportive energy that the mother sends to everyone. Some people are too armored to receive the love. Some people are too angry or whatever, but it's still armor. And so it's just a matter of learning to carefully learn to receive support. And it's, it's the most beautiful thing. We're not alone. Tons of beautiful help. And it is very vulnerable, though, to raise your hand and ask for help. And then be willing to learn from people who aren't perfect. Often we require that the people that train us be some idealistic version of something that's the ego is limiting you. Because if I would have only learned from people that had all their shit together, I wouldn't be here. You do want to follow and understand that this is going to be messy, and there's going to be that even more the reason to use your intuition rather than the analytical mind that would chop down any potential.
Yeah, such a great point. I mean, and that's the sneakiness of it, right? We are so susceptible at every step of the way to succumb to that conditioning. Just when you think you have liberated yourself, wait a minute, I think I'm better than somebody. I'm idealizing someone. Yeah, it's a constant practice, isn't it?
But we're wounded people, and as long as we don't pretend otherwise, we can still get a lot done while we're still in the process. So my teachers would say, show up as a beginner, and every
I love that. Yeah. So if there were, well, before I ask that, how can people find you? You have a number of different courses. Is there anything you want to share with people? Like, what are the different offerings? And I'll put everything in the show notes too, but anything you
Thank you.
would like to share?
It's just ongoing. I do 9-week courses. The next one starts in May. And we will go 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 3 weeks on. So it takes 3 months. We meet for 2 hours, and it's either on Sundays at noon or Tuesdays at 6 Mountain Time. And so different time zone options for people. And it's really powerful. We do synchronized movements that really shift perception, and we do them from both sitting and standing positions. There's a reason for that, but then we also, each class has a theme, and it's intuitively guided. So there's a lot of discussing the Toltec lineage and how they discovered what they discovered, and understanding the history of it a little bit, but more the energy signature. And then at the end of each 9-week course, there's an in-person workshop in Missoula, Montana. And that's where it really gets really powerful for the people that make it. When you spend a couple of days in synchronized movements, tapping into this power, everyone moves out of their mind and into their hearts. And it's really beautiful. It's really silent. We get really slow. Everything gets really strong. But most of what I do is one-on-one work. That's where kind of the deeper work is I help people recapitulate things that are challenging, and I help them learn how to recapitulate in a way that's practical and realistic for where they're at. And just I serve as a mirror. And so it just it's helpful to connect and meet, and I help people to get honest with themselves. And I'm ruthless enough to tell them things that they might not be getting told from people that are trying to get them to keep coming back and get a paycheck. Or, I'm not here for that. I'm of service. And so I walk a thin line. I'm not like thriving necessarily, but I trust that, that I keep getting taken care of because I'm inside of a very service-based, unique.
Yeah.
There's a lot of magic that's happening because of it.
And there's so much integrity in that, right? Like, I mean, and because we are so unconscious, I think the really incredible mentors are the ones that will put something right in front of your face and say, look at this, look at this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I usually say it in a way that isn't threatening, but it's received
Right.
anyway. And so it's confusing to people, because normally they would be offended if somebody were to say what I said, but I deliver it in a way in which there's nothing to defend.
Well, it's all the energy is there, right? The energy is all, the cocoon is all there, right? So the experience of it happens differently, I imagine. Yeah. So if you could leave the audience with one thing, like, what do you want people to know more than anything? If you could say, like, I just want everybody to know this one thing, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people knew that they could fall in love with their existence rather than try to fall in love with someone else, that's where you become whole, and then you're more likely to find someone who is whole, and then the type of magic that can happen because of that is so much more significant than kind of the torturous process that most relationships go through. It doesn't have to be so hard. And so there's a way to energetically reclaim your essence from your past sexual experiences, especially. and that's your chi, that's your sexual energy is dreaming energy. They're one and the same. And this is a dream. And in order to get good at dreams, good at dreaming, because I'm not that far along in the outer dream world, but I'm really gifted at being able to see the magic of this layer of the onion, being present, silent, and seeing how beautiful the earth is. And so that itself is just, it's enough. And so the falling in love with your existence piece, I think, is key.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your time and spending this time with you.
Yeah, it's really good to meet you, Abby. Thanks for bringing me on. Appreciate it very much.